So we've been talking about who Jesus was. We talked about him being a prophet. We've talked about him being, I've forgotten my notes. Priest, thank you. So this week we're talking about him being a shepherd, and I was like, let me find a good shepherd story. Well, if you put in good shepherd story in Google, you get all these books about the good shepherd and good shepherd ministry. So it got me thinking about a good shepherd, and I had this flip to a German shepherd. And so I found some of these cute stories. There's this little girl, Molly, in 2016, she lives in Florida, and she was playing in the backyard with her German shepherd, Haas, and she came across a diamondback rattlesnake. And Haas stood between Molly and the snake. He withstood 3 bites or strikes from the snake and saved Molly from being killed by the snake. And fortunately, Haas survived. After a lengthy stay in the hospital, lots of anti-venom, they were able to save Haas, and Haas and Molly are now fine. And then I found another story. This man, Bill Myers, this was just this last year, he adopted a German shepherd named Sadie. And it was love at first sight. You guys know, if you had a dog, they just love us. And, she'd kiss him, and it was great. And so Bill got COVID, and he got really sick, but he got better. Huzzah! But then one night, he had a stroke in the middle of the night. It was like an after effect of the COVID, and he was trying to walk to the bathroom, and he fell and collapsed in the corner, and he couldn't get up, and he couldn't get out. And Sadie came and was licking him and trying to check on him, and I'm here, and he grabbed her collar, and she just knew to walk backwards and to pull him out of the corner, and she helped him, because German Shepherds are big, strong dogs, she helped him get up and get to a phone where he was able to call for help and get the help that he needed. And so I'm sure we can think of thousands of stories. You've probably all heard stories of dogs, especially German Shepherds, saving people. They are guide dogs. They are bomb dogs. They're drug dogs. They are rescue dogs. These dogs jump out of airplanes. How do you teach a dog to jump out of an airplane? Most people can't even get their dog to go in the vet's office. How do you teach a dog to jump out of an airplane? I don't know. But these dogs they're smart, they're strong, they're loyal, they're courageous, they're loving. Those people who own German Shepherds will tell you they're very loyal, loving, great dogs with kids and families. They're the number 3 dog breed in America. So they're very popular, very well known for their even temperament and their courage under fire. And so I think it's really appropriate that they're named Shepherd. If you go back to their origins, they were a herding dog. And then in Germany, they have another name. It starts with an A, Alistair, or something like that. But we call them German Shepherds. And they're very appropriately named because they have the characteristics of a good shepherd. And so I started thinking, what are some of the good characteristics of a good shepherd? And so I came up with a few of them. First of all, a good shepherd leads his flock to safety and to nutrients. Like a good shepherd, think about the humankind especially, they would guide they knew the lay of the land, they knew where the food was, they knew where the dangers were, and they would lead their flock where the flock needed to go so that they could have enough food and water and be safe. They care for and they provide for their flock. And I didn't know, I was listening to a thing a long time ago, and where in Jesus' time, it's not like green meadows everywhere. It's patches of grass everywhere. So the shepherd will walk by with a stick, and the grass will grow underneath the rocks because it's cooler there and it doesn't get them burned up. So the shepherd would walk around knocking these rocks so that the sheep would have food to eat. And so I think about in the Bible, I have it up here. Shepherd, in the Bible, shepherd is mentioned 118 times. It's a lot. So we all know this one in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. I lack for nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemy. The Lord, our good shepherd, guides us. He leads us to a place of green pasture. He leads us to a place of refreshing and quiets our souls. He leads us along the right path. A good shepherd leads his flock along a good, right path. He feeds them. He makes sure that they don't go without. Another thing of A good shepherd is he protects his herd. You know, like a shepherd back in Jesus' day, they would pen up their animals and they would lay across the opening of the pen so that the wolves and whatever would have to get through them to get to their flock. You know, they, like if it's a German shepherd, you know, if it's something like with Molly, you know, Haas got between her and the danger and said, not on my watch, you're not taking my little girl. You know, they protect their people and they're used for protection a lot of times. Like German shepherds are used for protection, and shepherds, human shepherds, protect their flock. They get rid of the enemy. They go in after, if one of their lambs or one of their herd gets lost, they go after and they fight for it. And when I think about David in the Bible, he was known as a good shepherd. And so, and Jesus, obviously. I'll get to David in a second. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. He's willing to die for his flock, for his herd. And Haas, the dog, he was willing to die for Molly. I don't know if as a dog he understood that snake could kill him. He must have understood it was dangerous because he protected his human from her. And then David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or bear came and carried off sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it and I rescued the sheep from its mouth. And when it turned on me, I seized it by its hair and I struck it and I killed it. Now, let's be real. Who out here is going to run after a lion or a bear and pull something out of its mouth? Who has that kind of courage to do that? David's like, not on my watch. You're not taking my sheep. I will risk my life for my sheep. And a good shepherd protects at the cost of his life his sheep. All right, a good shepherd, we already did that one. All right, a good shepherd knows his sheep, right? He loves them. They know his name. They know his voice, and when they hear him, he calls. Not on my game today, guys. You guys know that one. All right, they listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. A good shepherd just has like their own whistle, and all their sheep like, oh, that's my shepherd. Like, you know, like back in the days, the sheep would, like the shepherds would kind of get together, the sheep would all intermingle. But when the one shepherd would whistle or call or whatever, the sheep would be like, oh, that's my guy. And they would leave the rest of the group and go get with their guy, right? And the shepherd knows what their sheep sound like. So if their sheep is missing and like, bah, you know, they're like, oh, that one's mine. And they would go get them. It's an intimate relationship, shepherd and sheep. Even though the shepherd might have hundreds of sheep, it's an intimate relationship that the shepherd has with the sheep. And it says here in Isaiah, he tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers his lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. It doesn't say he like puts a leash on, like, come on, let's go. Like, you're kidding them all. You know, like when the sheep would get lost or be scared, the shepherd would grab them and hold them and like, it's okay, I've got you, I'm here. I'm not going to let you go. I'm going to take care of you. It's an intimate, close relationship that the shepherd has. And also, this poor sheep, the shepherd grooms his sheep. Okay, so this sheep, Barack, he was an Australian sheep. He got separated from his herd for 5 years. He had 78 pounds of wool on him because he didn't get sheared for however many years he was out in the wilderness. And I'm sure that wool was full of sticks and dirt, and that poor guy, how can he possibly see? You know, sheep actually can die if they're not sheared. They are meant to be groomed. They are meant to be sheared. They can't live long. Unlike goats can live in the wild because their hair doesn't get as long, but sheep, if left completely by themselves, they'll die. They have to have the grooming and the care of their shepherds. And their shepherds would shear them, and then they would coat them in oil so that that would keep the lice and the stuff off and condition their skin and stuff. So a good shepherd grooms their sheep. And in Psalms 23, later it says, you anoint my head with oil, you groom me. My cup overflows. I am so abundantly blessed because of the grooming and the care of my good shepherd. And so as we come into the Christmas season, we remember that Christ is a shepherd. And I was really struck this week. I got to thinking about like nativity scenes. I was talking to my students about nativity scenes because they're a big deal in Spain and in some Latin countries. And now that I'm teaching Spanish, like we're talking about Latin culture. And I think about what's on a nativity scene. Obviously, there's Mary and Joseph and Jesus, and there's some sheep and a cow. There's almost always a shepherd, the angel, and the wise men. And I think that God intentionally put those images in the Christmas story. Think about shepherds. The first job, the first profession in the Bible is a shepherd. Abel, the one whose brother killed him, he was a shepherd. We talk about David, the best king in the Bible. He was a shepherd. Jesus, they talk about him being the good shepherd. Who was invited? Who was the only person, the only group of people invited to the birth of Christ? The shepherds. They're the only ones that got a personal invitation by the angels. The wise men just figured out that they should come, but the shepherds were actually invited to come. Because God saw their hearts, and he has a heart for shepherds, one. And I think he wanted to put the image and the iconic idea of a shepherd into the Christmas story so that we would associate that with Jesus. Because he's the good shepherd. He has all these qualities we've talked about. Jesus leads us. Jesus protects us. Jesus grooms us. We know him. We have this close, intimate relationship with him. And I think he invited the shepherds to the Christmas story so that we would associate him with the shepherd and all the qualities of a good shepherd. Because that's who he is to us. And so, one, I think that's good to just remember that about Christ, but also remember, we've been talking about our job as Christians is to be mini Christs wherever we go. So our job then is to be shepherds wherever we go. We are to carry that anointing with us wherever we go. So that means we are charged with protecting, guiding, grooming, loving those people in our circle. That's our charge at Christmas, is to remind us of who God is, which reminds us of who we should be. And so I think about Jesus and Peter had this super close relationship that we see in the Bible. And the last conversation that we see them have is this one. It's after the resurrection. And this is really the only one-on-one conversation that I see Jesus have with any of the apostles necessarily. I guess the whole doubting Thomas thing. But poor Thomas. But we see this conversation that Jesus has with Peter right before he ascends into heaven. It says they had finished eating, and Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than all these?" And he's like, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And Jesus says, "Feed my lambs." He's saying, I need you to feed. And lambs are the babies, right? Lambs aren't the full-grown ones. He's like, feed the babies. Feed the spiritual babies. Who are the spiritual babies around us? Our job is to feed them with encouragement and love and show them what the love of Christ looks like. Our job is to pour out the love of Jesus onto the lambs around us. Those people we work with, those people in our family, those people in our community, our neighbors who maybe don't know the Lord, our job is to pour out the love of the Lord on them so that they can see what that graciousness looks like. And then Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He's like, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus says, "Then take care of my sheep." So the sheep are the adult ones, right? So he's like, I need you to take care of those of my flock. Take care of them. Make sure they have the food that they need. Make sure they have the water that they need. Protect them. So our job is to encourage, to protect, to groom those people, those believers around us, to lift them up when they're down, to lead them beside quiet waters, to restore their soul. And sometimes our job is to also challenge them in truth and love, to challenge them also if we see them going astray. So that is another one of our jobs, is to take care of the sheep. And finally, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was so hurt because he had to be asked so many times. He says, "Do you love me?" And he says, "Lord, you know I love you. You know my heart." And he said, "Then feed my sheep." How do we feed our neighbors? We encourage them. We look at the needs that they have and we see what we can do to provide either what they need, or we look and see how can we encourage them. How can I pray for you? Okay, I pray for somebody. I ward off the enemy by listening to what my friends and neighbors say and identifying the evil spirits that are attacking them and praying against that. I do it by encouraging people who are doing good or need to be encouraged because they're down. I do it by loving on the people around me. This is how we feed the lambs. This is how we are good shepherds. As we show those shepherding qualities to all of those who are around us in our circle. I might not be able to minister to the Congress. I might not be able to minister to President Biden. I might not be able to minister to people in Africa, but I can minister to the people in my circle. I can minister to my neighbors, the people I work with. I can minister to the people in my family. I can listen to what they need and try to encourage them or provide for them or challenge them, whatever it is that they need in that moment. So my charge to you this Christmas is to remember that Jesus is the good shepherd and to think to yourself, how can you be a good shepherd to those people in your circle? And all of God's children said, Amen. All right.